Welcome to another episode of Beauty and the Biohacker, where we explore the latest tools and trends in self-care, aesthetics, and peak performance to help you live your most beautiful life from the inside out. I'm your co-host, Katie Moore, the biohacker part of Beauty and the Biohacker, with over 3 years of experience self-experimenting in the space of health and wellness, and I have a YouTube channel at Katie Type A.
Hey everyone, my name is Rachel Varga. I am the beauty part of Beauty and the Biohacker here with Katie. I'm a board certified aesthetic nurse specialist with over 19,000 procedures performed and under my belt, and an international clinical trainer. I train other physicians and nurses on aesthetic practices, rejuvenation, all that cool stuff, and a celebrity skin expert. And all of this is, we're really just bringing these resources to you guys to help you be your best version, both on the inside and out.
And today we are thrilled to have Cody Hopkins on the show. Cody is a physicist turned farmer who has spent the better part of the last decade really dedicated to studying ethical farming practices and, of course, sustainable agriculture. And in 2014, he founded Grass Roots Co-op, which is a really great collective of small family farms focused on the compassionate treatment of animals, sustainable farming practices, and, of course, transparency to the end consumer. And since launching, Grass Roots has grown from 6 to over 20 farms and has been featured on everything from the Today Show to the Food Network and Bulletproof Radio. So welcome to the show, Cody.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. That's quite an intro. Thanks.
Well, you have quite a background, and I want to just dive right into it. You were a physicist and you were a math teacher. How on earth did you get into sustainable farming, and what was that kind of trigger point for you to really want to start making a change in this industry?
Yeah, so, I think that there's several trigger points for me. One was I grew up in rural Arkansas, in sort of the backyard of large industrial agriculture, and I saw what that did to poor rural communities across our state. And so one of the things that I wanted to do, from a fairly young age, but certainly after college and moving back to rural Arkansas, was help make a difference in my community and help create opportunities for other small farmers. So part of it was looking at economic development for impoverished rural communities, and then another part of it was I was experiencing some health issues. I had a thyroid issue that was diagnosed right before we started this path to start a farm. And so I was looking for a way to, a healthier lifestyle. And then, I also was heavily influenced by a book I read by Michael Pollan that was, focused. It was called The Omnivore's Dilemma. It's a great book, fun read, but it really talked about the environmental damage that and the terrible animal welfare conditions that industrial agriculture, especially in the livestock space, is contributing to the universe and the world. And so, it was really about a journey to help improve my community, improve my health, and create a business that would actually make this world a better place versus extract from the rural communities that they existed in.
Wonderful. I happen to love that you have a background in physics. I'm a massive nerd myself. Get me talking about particle physics, space, all that sweet jazz. I'm like, whew, cloud nine. Anyways, what I really like about what you offer is also that you work within a co-op model. And actually, during my nursing training a long time ago, I actually did some community work within a health cooperative. So people that had difficulties affording access to alternative healers, whether that's acupuncture, TCM, nutritionists, naturopaths, they could pay a small monthly fee, and it allowed them access to all of these providers that actually a lot of them were even donating their time to serve underserved populations. So tell us a little bit about your co-op farm model. How do farms join? How do they join you on your wonderful mission? And how do you kind of enforce the rules and keep the standards high with your care, which comes through your food?
Yeah, there was a lot in that question there. So, one of the reasons why we took the co-op model is because we believed that there was sort of strength in numbers, and that by working together, we could sort of help build a new food system that would be good for farmers, good for customers, and good for the environment and the animals that we're raising. And so, and actually the cooperative model in the U.S. was really developed to help farmers work together. And so it's really an underutilized model in the farming space today. I mean, there were several older co-ops that are, 100 years old or older, but you don't see a lot of new co-ops starting up. And so, we were looking at it as a way to help give our farmers ownership, to sort of cut out the middleman and let the farmers have control of the business. And so to compare this to like, a Tyson model. So Tyson is owned by, a small family and the shareholders, right? And so it's focused on the shareholders' interest, which is maximizing profits, versus, we have very different values. The industrial meat system and the way the ownership structure is it's sort of a philosophical, a major philosophical distinction between the way Grassroots is organized and the way the vast majority of the industrial meat model is organized. The industrial meat system is focused on producing meat as cheaply as possible to maximize shareholder profits, whereas we have other values. We care about improving the environment. We want to build wealth in rural impoverished communities. We want to raise animals in a way that's good for the animals, where the animals live a life that they're happy about. And then, we care about making sure customers have the healthiest food possible. And so we have, we set up this business so that we would not be in a position where we were forced to, maximize profits, but instead could sort of follow our values. And, those values are core to who we are. And, you asked about how do we bring on new farmers? Well, it's really, we see ourselves, Grassroots is, connecting small family regenerative livestock farmers with conscientious carnivores, right? And so, we see, the more customers that are looking for this kind of meat, the more farmers we're able to add. And so, we are constantly trying to educate customers, tell customers about the story, the important work that we're doing, share our values so that we can add new farmers. Our goal is to change the way meat is produced and consumed in this country. And that really starts with educating customers on the value and the importance of supporting the kind of farmers that we work with. And then we are, we have one thing that makes Grassroots different. So we're trying to develop the next generation of farmers. So we have people on staff who train farmers, provide farmers with logistical support, help farmers get access to capital and resources. And so, and then also ensure that our farms are meeting and have the resources they need to meet our standards. And so they go and inspect every farm. They spend time on farms every single week. And so we're not just an e-commerce company that's buying meat from farmers in Australia or farmers we've never met. We actually have a part of our team is working to train and develop farmers. Our business is actually led. I'm a farmer, so I'm the CEO of the business, and you have farmers at the front with Grassroots and farmers all the way through. And so it's very important to us that we provide a lot of training and support to our farmers to really help them succeed and ensure that our customers are getting the best quality meat they can possibly get.
Perfect. And I actually see a really cool segue into the beauty industry. So what I love to share with people is how to be a conscious consumer. So this applies to absolutely everything. What we put on our bodies, what we put in our bodies, right? It's kind of the same, right? And when we are aware of some of the business practices, it is important for us to be conscious about who we're supporting. And when you were talking about education and standards, I actually see that in a lot of really great medical grade skincare companies that I've worked with for nearly 10 years. And it's neat how that is actually important in every type of business. So thank you so much for really encouraging that educational aspect within what you do as well, so that listeners here know that you are really doing your best to create a conscious business.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point. I think that, we often say that, you vote with your fork, in the kind of agriculture you want to see. It's the same way. And, you vote with your dollar, right? When you go out and you shop with any company. And so one of the great things, so Grass Roots is an e-commerce company. We go direct to consumers, right? Sell online. And one of the great things about the development of e-commerce is it's letting so many companies that have, really important values that are part of their business model connect directly with consumers, and it's giving consumers an alternative. So whether it's in the beauty industry or in the meat industry, it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, and I think this segues so nicely into a question I have about the process and the experience when you get your first grassroots box in the mail. How do consumers know exactly what farms or where their meat is coming from versus going to your grocery store and you kind of have no clue where that meat came from? The butcher might not even know. So tell me a little bit about how you've created this really customizable experience for every single consumer.
Yeah, so being radically transparent has always been something that's been core to us. I started out selling chickens and meat at the farmers market. So our farm, when we first started, we were on the road going to farmers markets and selling directly in a stall, right? And so we've always been advocates of being radically transparent with our customers. We want them to know which farm every chicken breast or ribeye steak comes from. And we want them to know their farmers. So, we tell the stories of our farmers. We have open farm days when it's safe to travel. We've always, every year hosted a couple of on-farm, like a potluck type thing where customers come out, spend the day on the farm, getting to see how it's done. So, at its core, we really believe that farmers, that consumers are disconnected from their food. And so we want to connect them directly to farmers, to our farmers. And so every package that you get from Grass Roots has a farm of origin stamp on it, so you know exactly which farm it came from. You can learn more about that farm on our website. And then we do profiles on farms throughout the year. And then we also have a QR code on every single package. We were the first meat company in the country to have farm to fork traceability on using blockchain technology. And so you can scan that QR code and it'll show the journey from start to finish. It'll tell you where it was processed, where it was harvested, which farm it was raised on, and tell you more about that process. And so for us, we want to change the way meat is produced and consumed in this country. And one of the core things for us in doing that is creating a food system of integrity where people know what the farmer, how the farmer's treated, what the farmer's paid, how farmers, raise the animals. Our standards are published, for instance, on our website. So, customers can go on and it's amazing. We have customers. We have the most educated meat eaters in the world, I think, that buy from us because they go through and there'll be questions about, it'll be like standard, 221C, and they will have a question about how to, like what's going on there. Why do you allow a, like grain fed to your chickens? What kind of grain is in your chicken? Do you in your feed for your chickens? So very, very interested customers that are looking to, for a way to trust what they're buying. And so we do a lot of work trying to share as much as we possibly can. Anything a customer asks, we're going to answer. We've had customers who call and say they want to know more about processing, and we connect them with, we actually own our own processing company. And so the person that runs that, Andy Shaw, he'll get on the phone with customers and answer very specific questions about how the animals are harvested or how the employees there are treated. So from start to finish, we're working to create a food system of integrity. And that starts with customers really being able to trust and know exactly how their food is being raised.
I love it. And I actually live on Vancouver Island. I'm actually surrounded by farms. My dear husband, Gabriel Varga, he's a 6-time pro world champion kickboxer. He's got quite the green thumb. And the next phase is going to be having a little bit of a hobby farm, and I'll be asking Dave and Lana Asprey for their tips. They've already checked out where we are and, you could do this. You could have pigs here to, get out all your blackberry roots and stuff like that. I'll definitely be, incorporating some of what you're doing here too on my property. Walk us through your argument about grass-fed and grass-finished meat, because grass-fed has really become quite a popular kind of buzzword, gets thrown around, but it's really the grass-finished. That is the key part. Can you cite some of the purported health benefits on both the microbiome and skin health? And even if it's just anecdotal, if you have some research articles that you can point us towards to substantiate any claims, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'll just go straight to some of the benefits on our blog. We have several articles where we did some fatty acid testing on our meat that showed amazing results, amazing differences. Also, higher levels of amino acids, higher levels of vitamin A and D. So there's several articles on our blog, and I can give you a link to those articles.
And vitamin A is key for anti-aging. It's a very powerful antioxidant. It's been used in skin health for decades. There's tons of research on this. So yeah, we can get a lot of vitamin A actually through our diet, which gives us actually a degree of internal skin sun protection, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And just sort of philosophically from my standpoint, it's you've always heard the saying, you are what you eat. And, I believe it goes further than that. It's not just what you eat, but what you eat eats, right? And so, in the case of our herbivores, which are, our goats and sheep and cattle, those are animals that have evolved to eat just grass. They don't need grain. Grain actually makes them sick. And so, they have what are called rumens that allow them to digest, turn beautiful grass into really healthy protein, right? And so if you feed those animals grain, it actually makes them less healthy. Consequently, the meat's less healthy. For instance, when we did the fatty acid test, our omega-3 ratio was in our grass-fed beef, it was 6 times better than what you find in conventional beef. And so that's one area, but there's many other areas where, whether it's the vitamin content or the amino acids, or, there's lots of areas where it's just nutritionally, if it's raised in an environment it's evolved to live in, it's just better for you. Our pigs, for instance, are raised in a forest, right? So they get grain, right? Pigs do well on grain. They're omnivores. And so do our chickens. Chickens actually have a stomach that allows them a little grain mill basically inside them to be able to grind up the grain, right? And so our pigs, for instance, they're out in the forest. They are eating wild berries, acorns, hickory nuts. When we did the fatty acid test with them, they were 10 times, the omega-3 ratio is 10 times better in our forested pork than what you would find in a conventional grocery store. And so, I think that it's, really putting animals outside, not saying, you can call a chicken pasture raised and actually never put it on pasture. All you have to do is take a chicken house, cut out a door on the side, and then give it access to a dirt run outside. And you can call that a pasture chicken. And so the way we do it is we actually put those chickens out on fresh grass, and they're moved every single day to fresh grass. Our turkeys are out on fresh grass. They're moved every single day to fresh grass. Not a dirt lot, but fresh grass every single morning. Same thing with our cattle. They're moved to fresh grass every single day. So it's not all grass-fed beef is created equal. It's, you're right. It's how they're finished is very important, that they're on it their entire lives, because you do see a lot of the grass-fed beef industry will keep them out on grass for a period of time and then finish them on grain, and then you don't get the benefits of a grass-fed animal. And in our case, they're out there their entire lives getting moved every single day, so that every day they have a lush new salad bar to start munching on. And that really comes through in the flavor and the health benefits of the animals.
Yeah, that is fascinating. And I actually just turned a group of friends onto your forested pork because I
Oh
did
my gosh,
explain
so
to
good.
them why it is so different, and the digestive system of pigs, which I think it's just you can taste it in the flavor, but you just feel better eating it too. And so they are like totally on board now, and that's kind of the whole purpose of finding these, unique companies and being able to share that information, because now they're more educated consumers as a
Yeah,
result. They're going to
yeah,
think differently when they go out for dinner and, does this have a grass-fed steak on it or not? And maybe I'll take a different option instead. But I do know, and I've looked extensively into your co-op rules, and I know that antibiotics are not something that you guys use in terms of your agricultural practices. So I'm sure that does come with some, given the fact that you're working with livestock, I'm sure that comes with some, potential issues with, cows and pigs getting sick. So I would love for you to kind of talk about, what challenges you face from not using hormones and antibiotics like you might get in factory farms, and what have you done about it?
yeah. So we have it's antibiotics are a big deal in the animal industry. I think something I've read that 80%, somewhere in that realm, like a huge percentage of the antibiotics used in this country go to livestock production, industrial livestock production. And that's an extremely scary thing, whether it's just it coming through in the meat, or the effects related to antibiotic resistance, bugs. And so it's terrifying, really terrifying to me. And so, we have a really strong stance on antibiotics. We don't, in our approach is to treat the animals in a way that we have a proactive approach. So whether it's the quality of the feed, we spend more on the minerals that we put in our feed. We put kelp in our feed. We put probiotics in our feed. We're doing things that, from a nutrition standpoint, that help keep the animals as healthy, super, super healthy and vibrant, right? We also, not just what we feed them, but also the way we keep them on pasture, fresh pasture. So every day, the way they're being moved every day to fresh pasture, that breaks parasitic cycles, helps build their immune system. They're just a lot healthier because they're not, conventional ag production, whether it's a chicken house or a feedlot for beef or a pig house, hog house. Those animals are kept in the same spot their entire lives. And so they're just, it's disgusting to say, but they're just full of manure. They don't have ground underneath them. They have manure underneath them, right? And that's a very dangerous, unnatural situation to be in. And so and we do the opposite. Ours are always, they spend one day and then they're on to a next spot. So that really helps keep the animals super duper healthy. We're not 100%. Antibiotics are a good thing for, society, right? If used appropriately. What's happened in the ag industry, just gone so far the other way. They use it to make their animals grow faster and make more money. And that's what happens when all you value is how many dollars you can make, right? Maximizing profit. That's the way the industrial system is set up. It's all about, forget the consequences. How much money can we make, right? And when you are buying meat raised in a system like that, it's very dangerous because they don't care about your health. They don't care about the environment. They don't worry about things like antibiotic resistance in relation to society. They worry about it in relation to is it going to make us less profitable, right? And so, we have a really strong, strict stance against that. We don't use antibiotics that way. If a farmer has a cow that needs antibiotics to stay alive, well, we give the farmer the permission to do that, but we just do not put that into our food chain. That farmer will have to take that and go to a different sale barn or something like that to sell it. But what we really preach to all of our farmers, and we do this with the support we provide them with our technical assistants on our staff, is being a proactive approach so that we don't have these issues. We've never I've raised a lot of chickens here on our farm out on pasture, and turkeys too. We've never, ever, ever given antibiotics. If they if we ever have like an animal that doesn't look good, our approach is we go, look at probiotics and, different vitamin mixes to try to boost their immune system. So, we believe that, if you can be proactive about it, it should be shouldn't really be much of an issue.
So talking about being proactive with your animals that you're caring for, why can't we as, humanity collectively become more proactive in our health as well? Am I right? There's such an overlap there. And I'm so proud of you for taking that stance, because what you're doing is you're almost, planting the seeds, that was a great pun, for other people to start to live their lives in a different way. So I'm very proud of you for doing that. I wanted to ask you a question about the color and texture, because I'm always looking at, color and texture of skin. How can we remove brown spots, promote collagen, reduce sagginess to the skin, low brows, hooded eyelids, all this stuff. I'm like a color and texture junkie. I'm looking at it in everything. And Dave and Lena actually gave us some beautiful ribs from their farm. And a couple of weeks before, my father-in-law is a trained French chef, and he makes these fabulous ribs, but they were from the traditional grocery store. They were, on sale. He was feeding like 10, 15 of us. And then we had Dave Asprey's meat, and I was like, my mind was blown. Like the cartilage was edible. It was just like soft and buttery, and the ribs were falling off the bones. It was just this beautiful like mouthfeel. It was just awesome. So tell us a little bit about how the color and texture of the meat that the animal was raised using grass over grains can really create a difference.
Yeah, well, so I'm going to start not with meat, but with an egg. All right. And you see this, it's funny. My son has a flock of laying hens, and it's sort of his mini enterprise. He's a budding entrepreneur. So he has that and a hive of bees right now. But so every morning I make an omelet out of his eggs, or his chicken's eggs, and they're out on pasture. And if you look at a chicken egg that's been raised on pasture, the color of the yolk is orange. Like you can see the beta carotene in there. It's just a totally different look. And it holds together in a totally different way. You drop a pasture-raised egg onto a skillet, and it's like, it holds its form, versus a conventional chicken house chicken egg, and it's pale yellow, almost white, and then it just sort of falls apart. And so, it's amazing to me the difference. You can really see the difference there in a chicken egg. In the case of meat, I can't tell you how many customers, especially folks who are in their 50s to 60s, who eat our chicken, and they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't had real chicken since I was a kid, basically. And if someone who's like 70 or 80 gets it, it's like, oh my gosh, this is what chicken used to taste like when I was, younger. And so it's the way it's raised, pigs, for instance, being out on the forest, eating acorns, it totally changes the melting point of the fat in the pork. And so it will actually melt at a lower temperature because of that, and gives it a much, the texture is totally different. The color is a deeper, darker red because it's out eating different things. And so the diet absolutely affects the color, certainly the flavor, the health benefits, and the texture of the meat, for sure. You're absolutely right.
I'm totally obsessed that you just mentioned melting points. This brings me back to my organic chemistry labs when we're looking at a compound and then we add impurities or whatever, and it changes it. Absolutely. And what you're talking about with the egg yolk, the constitution of the membrane is stronger in those healthier eggs. And our skin every cell in our body is made of membranes. And so I just thought that was really cool.
That's cool. Yeah. And back to your question about, being proactive, I think that, so I've never been big into like biofeedback. All right. But I have recently got this little ring. It's a sleep ring. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I'll tell you what.
We're all right there with you.
Yeah. So I think more things on this front, on the biofeedback front, because this totally changed my behavior. Like at night, I'm like, no, I can't eat now because last night when I ate late, it caused my, HVR to be up high. And so I think, developments in the biofeedback space that, it's wearables, right? That folks can wear to help give them, feedback on their health can be one way to help, because it's hard to be proactive. We're all so busy. It's most people, so many of our customers don't come to us until they've had a real serious health issue, right? It's just over and over again. It's like, well, we have a thyroid or, some sort of autoimmune disease, or, my son or daughter is sick. And so, it's if we could find ways to get some feedback a little bit earlier from our body, I think that would be a fantastic way to help address what you were talking about earlier in regards to being a bit more proactive as a...
Bonus question. Is your Oura Ring on airplane mode?
No, it's not. Should it be?
Yes, Katie?
Yes, put it on airplane mode, then you get no EMFs, and we can cover that another time. But I absolutely love what you said about, sometimes just taking the proactive approach, instead of waiting for symptoms to show up. Anecdotally, I have some friends who have just started now experimenting with carnivore after facing some thyroid issues. And so it was such a jarring, life-altering change from moving from the standard American diet into something carnivore. And full disclosure, they're only eating grass roots meat right now. But it now takes a longer time to start really doing all of these health practices and really revamping your entire life. Whereas when you can take small steps and just start incorporating, only grass-fed meat here, and then, being really mindful of organic produce and starting to take control of your sleep, if you can start layering those things into your life every day, it makes it so much less jarring and taxing. At least that's how it's been for me. But I did want to kind of segue into talking a little bit more about the carbon positive impact that you leave on your soil. So just for listeners, in case you don't know, I'd love for you to kind of walk us through what that means, because one of the things I love, and the reasons why my fiance and I always buy from Grass Roots, is because we do care a lot about the environment and the long-term ecology of our planet. And you guys do a great job with humanely raising animals, but you're not only just doing that, you're doing so much more in terms of how you're raising them. So talk a little bit about this carbon positive impact and what that could mean for our earth long term.
Our soil is the biggest carbon sink that we have in the world, right? We can actually absorb carbon in the atmosphere into the soil and help reduce our carbon emissions, right? And it really starts with the organic matter in the soil. If you're able to build the organic matter in the soil, then that increases that soil's ability to pull carbon from the atmosphere and sequester it. It also helps increase the soil's water holding capacity too. An interesting stat that I think it's fascinating. So for every percentage point increase you make in your soil's organic matter for an acre, right, that increases that soil's water holding capacity by 20,000 gallons. That's just amazing to me. So when we started out, the soils on our farm held, it was about a 1.5% organic matter. We're up to 4% now. It's incredible. I mean, you're talking about going from holding, an acre holding 25,000 gallons or 30,000 gallons of water to almost 80,000 gallons of water. I mean, imagine what that does downstream. I mean, not only does it make our pastures, our pastures are much more green than our neighbors, but it also reduces erosion. It reduces, the runoff downstream, right? So it's building that organic matter does a lot of good for the world, all right? And as you're able to increase that organic matter in your soil, you are able to sequester more and more tons of carbon. And most farms, especially livestock farms, should be actually a net negative carbon sink. And so our goal as a ecosystem, as a food system, working with our farmers, processing, is to be, at the end of the day, even after we ship it to our customers, a net negative carbon, a zero carbon emitter as a company. We believe in it so much, we actually have started investing in a company that does, they work with tree farms around the world, and they offset carbon footprints for companies around the world that are, by buying carbon credits with these tree farmers. And so, it's an amazing thing that can really help us improve our ecosystem and our environment across the world. And the way you do this is by managing animals. The fastest way is by taking herbivores and chickens and pigs and rotating them around land in a way that actually increases the diversity in the soil, increases the diversity on top of the ground, more grasses, different types of grasses, legumes. We also we add every year we're adding new varieties of plants to our pastures to try to increase that diversity. So moving animals in a way that actually builds the soil. It's an amazing sort of symbiotic system where the animals are rotating in a way that it's mimicking their natural behaviors. That creates a healthier animal, and then that also creates healthier soils and healthier pastures. And over time, those pastures have a real valuable impact on our environment.
So Cody, I've listened to a lot of podcasts on kind of the big two schools of thoughts, the vegans and the carnivores, and their thoughts on ecology. And so on one hand, you have kind of some vegans arguing that, well, cows are one of the leading causes of global warming. And then on the other side, you have this idea of like carnivores saying, well, the monocrop culture is really what is destroying our planet's soil. And in some ways, both are right to some degree. So I get that your practices are carbon positive, and that is amazing. But how much land would this actually take to feed every single person on the planet this way? And based on your answer to that, could some say that maybe grass-fed meat is a luxury good?
So there's a lot in that last point. All right. So it is more expensive. All right. It is. And I'll get to that in a second. But in regards to can we feed the world? Well, I'll start with can we feed the country? All right. And so the average American eats around 222 pounds of meat a year on average. All right. Now, you can debate whether that's too much or not. I think it's fine. I think, our stance is eat less, but better quality. All right. But I'll come back to that. So our farm, all right, produces around between the chickens, the turkeys on pasture, the pigs in the forest, and the cattle that we raise. Every year, we're raising around 225,000 pounds of meat every year. All right. So, essentially our farm is feeding about 1,000 people, has the ability to feed 1,000 people every year at that 222 pounds per person. All right. Now, that means they're going to have to eat a whole animal diet. All right. They can't just pick T-bone steaks every night. All right. They have to eat a mix of, they have to eat ham hocks and bacon and, pork chops, along with their, maybe their pork jowl, or things like that. Right. So I do think it means we would have to eat differently. All right. But so to put that in perspective, if our farm can feed 1,000 people, all right, then to feed our population, you would need around 310,000 farms of our size to feed our country. All right. And, with our land size, that would be about, around, we have about 300 acres here, a little over that. So you're talking about 100 million acres of farms like our farm to be able to feed the country. Well, so 300,000 livestock farmers doing regenerative ag. I mean, talk about an amazing thing across this country. That would, right now in the U.S., we have 2 million registered farms, right? So I definitely think 300,000 farms is totally possible, right? It'd be an amazing, actually, economic development engine across our rural landscape. And then as far as the acreage goes, we have almost 1 billion acres, like 900 million something acres in agricultural production across this country. Well, you can cut some of that out because you don't need the grain production for the beef, or the sheep or the goats, right? And all we need to feed to replicate our farm here is 100 million of those 900 million acres. I think it's absolutely doable. And I live in the middle of the Arkansas Ozarks. It is not a fertile place here. I don't live in, we have really rocky, rough soils. And so I absolutely think it's possible. I do think that it's going to take a change in the way folks eat. It's going to mean eating the whole animal, which I think is better all around from a nutritional and from an enjoyment standpoint. And then in regards to how expensive, like, is this a luxury item? Well, I would say that, one way I think of this is, our grass-fed beef is a little less than $9 a pound on our website. That's, you order it there and shipped directly to your house for less, a little less than $9 a little less than $10 a pound. So around $9.50, I think. So a Snickers bar is over, when you look at it per pound, it's over $10 a pound. So it's about priorities, right? It's not about, it's now when you compare us to like cheap meat raised in a feedlot, yeah, we're going to be, twice as much or more. It does cost more. We, as I talked about earlier in the episode, we value more than just producing it as cheaply as possible to maximize profits. There's a lot of benefits that come, you can feel good about buying grassroots meat because of all the things, related to the environment, the animal welfare, farmers getting paid a living wage, the health benefits, in a way that, if you buy cheap meat, there's a lot of cost that consumers don't realize on the front end, but get you on the back end, right? And another interesting stat is that, I don't have this exactly, I can't remember the exact percentages, but this is directionally right. So basically in the 50s, on average, we spent about, I think it was 16 to 17% of our income on food and about 8% on healthcare. Today, that's totally inverse of that. We're spending almost 18% on healthcare and 8% on food. And so we spend in the developed world, we spend the least amount on food per capita out of any developed country. So from my standpoint, buy less, buy better, and feel good about it. That's sort of our stance here, and we think it'll create a much better country. So
I gotta jump in here because when you're talking about smarter spending, let's talk for a hot second about smarter spending with more conscious purchasing for what we put on our bodies and in our bodies. So here's a couple of tips. When you're thinking about budgeting out, your food and your skincare, right? Because that's what I do. People meet with me all over the world and they book a one-on-one with me. I'll go through what their skin goals are. How can we address certain things? Come up with a skin routine and a rejuvenation plan. It's pretty sweet. I don't know why more people don't do this work, to be honest. But the funny thing is, when I meet with people, this is the cool tie-in here, they're spending their whole month's food budget on their skincare. And I'm just like, your priorities are messed up. Let's just get things a little bit more streamlined. So basically, people can get started on a solid medical grade skincare routine for, less than $250. Budgeting maybe $110 a month. So to get really good products, you don't have to spend that and assume that to get great skin, it's got to have that luxury price tag. It's just taking a look at maybe spending smarter, using actives that are better for your skin, vitamin C, hyaluronic acid, peptides, growth factors, all that sweet stuff. And then for your food, maybe just buying less meat, but making sure that the meat is more consciously raised. It's more nutritionally dense. So my tips for you guys all listening is to really start to interact and reach out to people like Cody and your website for more resources on this. And, you guys can reach out to me directly one-on-one. Just, send us an email, direct message. You guys know how to reach us in the show notes below. And I'm happy to help you be your guide to optimize what you're doing on your skin. And Cody, you're the guy for in the body. And then Katie, you're also the biohacker. So yeah, Katie and I, we're happy to help you guys. That's what this podcast is all about, is giving great resources. So Katie, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's like you are going to get what you pay for, right? So people are always trying to kind of ask me for like, well, what kind of sleep tracker could I get for like under $25? Not a good one. There's a reason why we all have the Oura Ring, And so you invest kind of upfront, but you know that why you're investing is because it's impacting your long-term health. Why we invest in getting Grass Roots versus going grain fed at our local supermarket is because this is actually having an impact on our health. So I think that's like a really good way to kind of like wrap it up and just say, think about what your own goals are, and also like do tests too. Look at your blood markers and seek that kind of information, and then make your diet and lifestyle changes around that. So I think that's, kind of what I hope would be really helpful for people if they're just starting to download and start to dive into this stuff. And just to wrap up, Cody, I absolutely love what you guys are doing at Grass Roots. And I'd love to know if you could just, in like 30 seconds or less, paint us a picture of what the next 10 years look like.
Oh, wow. So the next 10 years, we'd love to see, a couple thousand grassroots farms across the country working together, connecting to, several 100,000 conscientious carnivores who are looking for healthy meat raised right. So it's for us, it's about making this meat more accessible to customers around the country, and then helping grow a new generation of farmers. So that's what we're focused on. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I have no doubt you guys are going to do it. And if you want to get more information about Grass Roots, you can find all of that in the show notes below, along with a special coupon code if it's your first time trying Grass Roots. And you guys definitely need to get some forested pork. Trust us.
Delicious.
Thank you so much, Cody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cody.